Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to head down to England once again, and we're going to return to a brewery that's featured on the channel a couple of times before. I've had some really nice beers from these guys over the years, a good few different styles, but if people were to ask me about this brewery, I would say that they're probably best known for their different kinds of lager beer and the more kind of lighter, sessionable type beers. But if you actually go and visit this brewery in their hometown, which I have done a couple of times, you'll find that they are very experimental and really quite well rounded. They do lots and lots of different things. Now, the beer that we're going to have a look at today is a style that I have tried from this brewery before, but one that I haven't reviewed on my own channel before. But it is supposed to be a very nice beer, this one actually. It's a style that I really quite enjoy, but I'm really curious to see exactly how this one's going to turn out. So hopefully it's another good beer. Hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and as always, I hope that you guys watching enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to head down to Bristol in the southwest of England, which as we know is a very, very good beer city these days. We're going to go to the outskirts of the city, I guess you could say, and we're going to have a look at another beer from Left-Handed Giant. So this particular beer is called Wolf Moon. It comes in at 11% ABV, and they're describing this one as a coconut, chocolate and black cherry imperial stout. So the interesting thing about this one is that the canned on date is the 29th of October 2020, and it says the best before is the 29th of April 2021. So they only put a shelf life of like 6 months on this one, but considering that it's an imperial stout, I think it will have lasted until this time. We're drinking this one in August of 2023, which is more than 2 years out of date according to them. But yeah, imperial stouts will last a good little bit longer than that for sure. But yeah, I have to say I'm really curious to see how this one's going to turn out, whether it's going to be more of a kind of pastry stout or a big sweet stout or what. But yeah, definitely cool to return to Left-Handed Giant for the first time on the channel for a sit-down review, at least since about 2018 or 2019. But more recently, of course, we did visit their city centre brew pub, and we also did an out-and-about video at their tap room on the outskirts of the city as well, at the main brewery. So yeah, you'll see that one appearing at some point fairly soon as well. But yeah, the Wolf Moon 11% Imperial Stout from Left-Handed Giant in Bristol. So, as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting though, just fast forward. All the usual links can be found in the video description below. That's the brewery website. The link to my other reviews that I've done are from Left-Handed Giant before, and we will no doubt add more to that list at some point in the near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The support that you give is massively appreciated. And remember, you can go into the channel homepage and search for beer using the geography tagging system. So just go in there, use the little search bar, put in your hometown, state, county, whatever you like. If I've reviewed beers from the area that you search for, they will pop up. Failing that though, you can check out the playlists of beers from different countries. You'll find this one in the English playlist along with a number of other things, and we will continue to add to that over the next little while, of course. But yeah, let's go on to my brewery notes then, and I'll tell you a wee bit about Left-Handed Giant once again. So, as I've mentioned to you already, Left-Handed Giant are based in Bristol in the southwest of England, and the company was founded back in 2015. But the three men behind the company are Bruce Gray, Jack Granger and Rich Poole, and there's a little bit of an interesting story behind the formation of this company. So Bruce had actually been quite active in the beer scene for a number of years. He started out as a pro junior golfer, but then moved into management in the golf clubs and learned the licence trade that way. But he then moved to Edinburgh in 2009 and worked managing bars before relocating to Aberdeen to open and manage the original Brewdog bar outside Marischal College, and then over the next couple of years he was involved in opening 7 other bars with Brewdog, but he left the company after 2 years to found a craft beer wholesaler company and also the Hanging Bat bar down in Edinburgh. That was in around 2012. But after a year he sold his share in both companies and then relocated down to Bristol, founding 2 companies there with his friend Jack. This was Big Beer Distribution, who are a wholesaler, and also also the Small Bar, which was rated as one of the best beer venues in the UK, and they also opened up a second bar in Cardiff as well, from what I understand. But one day in 2014, Rich walked into Small Bar and handed some of his homebrew over to Bruce and Jack, and this got them started on their brewing journey. So originally they started brewing 200-litre batches and cuckoo brewed at various different places before they decided to invest in their own premises in 2017. So the main brewery is in the St Phillips area of the city, but they opened up a 4,000 square foot premises in Bristol city centre in 2019, which is a brewery, bar and restaurant, and the brewery operates a 15 BBL kit. But apparently these guys produce in the region of 40,000 hectolitres of beer per year at the moment. But the new Left-Handed Giant venue has become known for its pizza and for showcasing the more experimental beers from the brewery. If you go in there, you can get lots of different styles, different sours and things like that, Kolsch's, you name it. They'll brew it in the brew pub actually, but the main brewery is producing the kind of bigger volume beers, the lagers and so on, that are distributed across all of England. But as of August 2023, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced 315 different kinds of beer according to Untappd, and like I said to you earlier, they are probably best known for their different lager beers. You know, the Killer Pills is one. That goes all across the UK. I think you can get them in Marks and Spencer's very, very easily, in fact. But yeah, they have a lot more experimental beers if you actually go and visit them in Bristol, which I do recommend that you do. I filmed an out and about video at the city centre venue with Harry of Blue Nose Beer Reviews. That's been on the channel for maybe a year or so, if I'm not mistaken. And then there will be another video comes out quite soon, which was from when I visited quite recently, and we went to the tap room in the St Phillips area. So yeah, you can check those videos out and you can have a little look at what's going on at Left-Handed Giant. But that is everything I can really tell you about the brewery for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website, you can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. Sorry about the edit there, guys, the camera just died, but yeah, we were just about to have a little look at the can on this one. So as you can see, it's a pretty old school can, this one, because it doesn't have the LHG symbol. So yeah, it would just be like a little box with LHG in it, but that's nowhere to be seen on this can. But this one is 440 millilitres, plain silver top on it there. But yeah, really nice artwork. I'm not sure exactly what it's meant to be. I think it's like a swordfish or a whale just kind of sticking his head out of the water or something like that. But yeah, or a wolf sticking his head out somewhere maybe. I don't know, but yeah, really interesting, kind of unusual artwork on this one, I have to say. But like we said earlier, this one is called the Wolf Moon. Comes in at 11% ABV, and it's a coconut, chocolate and black cherry imperial stout. When I had a little look at it earlier on Untappd, it said it had a rating of like 4.08, which is pretty impressive. It should be pretty nice. But it should be an interesting one. I'm curious to see whether it's like a kind of pastry stout, like an early interpretation of a pastry stout, or whether it's going to be more like a kind of sweet milk stout or something like this. But it contains desiccated and toasted coconut, cacao nibs, black cherry, and also some vanilla, and it's got oats in it as well. So I think it should be a big, thick, creamy sort of thing. But let's get it out into the glass and just see what it's all about. I think this could prove to be really quite interesting. So let's do this. Does look very nice. You could feel before you opened this one up that the can was a little bit hard, so you know the beer's a little bit older when you have that sort of thing. But yeah, I think that's enough out of the glass just to have a little look at it and see what it's all about. So yeah, before the head disappears from this one, then you can see the beer has poured with about a half finger or a 1/3 finger of a frothy, quite dark tan head there. You can see the medium-sized bubbles just sitting on the top of the liquid there, but you can see the head does get a little bit foamier the higher up you go. But it looks very, very nice actually, this one, pretty much as you would expect from any imperial stout, to be honest with you. So 1 or 2 big bubbles sticking toward the side of the glass here, a few little ones just going up toward the surface of the beer, but you can see it has faded away to be a very sort of thin, foamy layer. actually. But yeah, looks pretty good, this one. If you shine the light through this beer, this thing is pretty much black as night. You know, it's a very dark ebony sort of rosewood colour. If you put the light through it, you do get a little touch of an almost like chestnutty Coca-Cola coloured edge to it. But yeah, it does look pretty much as you would expect of an Imperial Stout. So remember, the colour of your beer depends on a few things. One, the type of malts that you use. This goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. Two, length of your wort boil is also going to play a role, because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. But any barrel aging that you do or adjuncts you put into the beer will affect the colour of it as well. But yeah, when it comes to Imperial Stouts, black beers basically, it's very difficult to affect the colour of these with barrel aging or adjuncts, just because of how dark the black malts are. Even the black cherries in this one aren't going to affect the colour all that much. But yeah, when you shine the light through this beer, you can see that it is pretty damn opaque, and that's probably due to the presence of the oats. But yeah, in terms of what you'd expect appearance-wise from an Imperial Stout, there's nothing madly surprising with this one. So yeah, I don't think we need to say anything more about the appearance of this beer. Let's go on and just have a wee look at the aroma then and see what it's all about. I'm really curious about this. Oh yeah, I'm going to say straight away, this thing just smells beautiful. To put it bluntly, rich as fuck. This is awesome. This is really very nice. And I'm quite happy about this, because it's not going to be one of these kind of modern pastry stouts. If it is a kind of pastry stout, it's going to be like the old school omnipoil things, the big sort of cakey things, rather than having that marzipan granola type thing that I really don't like with modern pastry stouts. This one smells as if it's like proper kind of old school, like maybe some combination of like a milk stout and a Russian Imperial Stout with the adjuncts put into it. So that's quite likely to be right up my street when it comes to this style. But yeah, it gives you everything you'd expect. Roasty, toasty character, chocolate. You can get the cherries, but the cherries don't dominate the aroma. There's a little bit of hoppy character still there. But yeah, it's a beautiful smelling beer, this one. So yeah, let's just try and break the aroma of this beer down then and describe it a little bit more in depth for you. Yeah, so the backbone of the beer, you've got that lovely kind of roasty, toasty, well-fired black bread crusty character just forming the backbone of the beer. Within that, there are little touches of like woody and kind of nutty characters in there, but yeah, above the black well-fired bread crust, you do get a little bit of an almost rye bready character, and it's like quite a kind of caramelised. It is quite a caramelised rye bread that you get out of this one. But then on top of that, you get a little bit more of a kind of wholemeal brown bread, and there's definitely a sort of cakey note to this one, like a kind of chocolate muffin, chocolate sponge type character. And of course within that, that's when you get the different coconutty notes. It does smell like Bounty Bar a little bit, this one, to be honest with you. So yeah, definitely, yeah, chocolate muffin, chocolate brownie for sure. You can get a little bit of the dryness out of the cacao nibs in this one. But yeah, the coconut and it has got a little bit of a kind of pecan-y almond sort of thing going on as well. You can smell that within the chocolate brownie, chocolate muffin type layers in this beer. So yeah, the way that goes together, I think, is really quite nice as well. Yeah, the chocolatey side of things for me is quite interesting, because as I say, you do get a little bit of that kind of cacao nib, that sort of cacao nibby dryness out of the beer, but then yeah, there's a wee bit of more, you do get the kind of higher percentage cocoa chocolate, you know, the sort of 70-80% cocoa chocolate, but then you're also getting a more milky chocolate out of this one too. I'm getting the vanilla out of the beer further forward, so you get a more kind of, you know, 40-50% cocoa chocolate as well, with the wee bit of vanilla in there, and I'm getting elements of brown sugar too. There's a bit of a toasty brown sugary character to it. Lovely big sort of treacle molasses sort of thing as well, but also a wee bit of just a toasty bright caramel. Yeah, it does, the aroma of this beer, it does smell kind of pastry stout like, but a bit more like the old school Omnipollo type imperial stouts. I think I would definitely say that, yeah, more along the lines of like an old school Omnipollo cakey sort of thing, like the Noah, or I can't remember what the other ones were called, but yeah, definitely along those lines rather than the more modern marzipan-y, granola type things, which I just don't like. But yeah, I think that's everything we really need to say about the kind of malty and yeasty side of the beer. On the hoppy side of things, and remember, imperial stouts are not the most hop forward of beers. You do still get a little bit of hoppy character out of this one. There is a nice little bit of earthiness in there. There's a wee touch of herbal character. Little bit of floral note and also a wee bit of grassiness, but as I say, there's a kind of mix of things going on with this one, but the hoppy character just adds a wee bit of depth to the beer, I would say. But yeah, not too much to report in that particular regard. But on the fruity side of things, this is quite interesting because you do get the big sharp black cherries, but underneath that you do get you know, a bit of blackberry, black currant. Yeah, you do get a bit of blackberry, a little bit of black currant, and yeah, you do get a little bit of blackberry, a little bit of black currant, and then you also get the nice big kind of figgy notes coming out of the beer. So yeah, the way that everything goes together there, I think, is really quite nice. Yeah, it does have a little bit of, when I think about this beer stylistically, it does have a little bit of a kind of pastry stout element to it, but I don't think this one is going to be overly modern pastry stoutish, if that makes sense. But yeah, as I always say, it doesn't have too much of that kind of phenolic marzipan-y type thing going on. So take a wee bit of time to enjoy the aroma of the beer before you get stuck into it. But I think we can crack into this one and see what it's all about. So yeah, let's get the rest of this beer out into the glass and just see what it's all about. I'm really curious about this one. So yeah, this was quite a nice random find in one of my boxes. I forgot that I had this. So yeah, this is the Wolf Moon, an 11% coconut chocolate and black cherry imperial stout from Left-Handed Giant. I was going to say Little Handed Giant, Left-Handed Giant in Bristol in Somerset, down in the southwest of England. Let's get stuck into this one. Slàinte, skål, cheers. Yeah, this is interesting because it's a really nice beer. I'm going to say that straight away. But you can really feel the beer is actually quite light in its mouthfeel. But the way everything kind of pushes out of this one further into the aftertaste is really quite interesting. Very smooth, silky stout, this one, as I say, a little bit lighter in its mouthfeel. But the way it all goes together is really, really nice. But yeah, this is good. It gets a big thumbs up from me. If I was to describe this beer stylistically, it has got a little bit of, it's a kind of combination of like imperial milk stout in a sense, and also just it has a little touch of pastry stout character to it. You know, 20%. It's maybe 20% pastry stout, 20%. Yeah, maybe about 15% pastry stout, 15% Russian imperial stout, and then the rest of it's milk stout. I think that's probably a good way to describe the distribution of this beer among the different style parameters. But it's good. That's the main question. You should always ask yourself, yeah, is it a good beer? And in this case, the answer is obviously yes. But with it being Left-Handed Giant, we wouldn't expect anything else. But let's break the flavour of the beer down and describe it for you a wee bit more in depth. We'll start in the middle third of the palette, as we always do. So yeah, for me, the backbone of this beer, the middle third of your palette, then, you can feel there's a little bit of that roasty, toasty, well-fired, kind of morning roll bread crust there. But that's very quickly kind of muted by other things. But yeah, you get that in the beginning, and the further forward you go on that middle third of your palette, you get a little bit of a kind of woody character coming out of this one. So yeah, nice kind of woody character further forward there. On top of that, bread crusty character, you get the you get like a sort of chocolate sponge cake type note to this one, and it's actually quite a light and airy sort of sponge cake. And that's interesting because within that sponge cakey layer, you get the coconut. Yeah, you have got this like sponge cake layer. You get the coconut sitting in there, and the coconut takes a little bit of time to. It takes a little bit of time to kind of show its face. To be honest with you, you get it more the further and further into the aftertaste you go. But yeah, well-fired bread crusty base, a little bit of the more kind of woody character further forward. Then yeah, you've got that chocolate spongy character there with a little bit of nuttiness sitting on top of it, or a little bit of the coconut kind of infused into it. That's probably a better way to describe it. But then yeah, above the cakey layer, you start to get the sort of wholemeal brown bready character coming out of it, which is really nice too. But yeah, the way that the beer goes together in that sense is really nice. So you've got the wholemeal brown bready layer in there, on top of the wholemeal brown bready layer, you can feel the kind of cocoa nibby character coming out of this one. So yeah, you have the chocolatey layer there. Further back on that middle third of the palette, you get the really kind of dry cocoa nibby notes. But then, and it's almost, as you move further forward from that, you get a little bit of an almost charred chocolate. But then it just kind of mellows out a little bit as you move further forward in the flavour. So yeah, nice kind of cacao nibby type quality in there. And it's quite a dark cacao nib actually when I think about it. That's really interesting. Yeah, interesting stuff there. But yeah, on top of it, it's quite the chocolatey character on this one overall is quite dry, but as I say, it kind of moves to be a sort of 50 or 60% cocoa chocolate the further forward you go as you reach the front of that middle third of your palette. But then yeah, above that you get a little bit of a, there is a little bit of a toasty brown sugar and maybe a wee bit of like a dry sweet caramel in the very centre of your palette. But really this beer is giving you more, it's more of the dry roasty coconuts and the kind of black malty character and the kind of cakey, savoury type note that comes out of this one the further into the aftertaste that you go. It doesn't have too big a sweetness to this, it's more like a dry kind of cakey type quality you get out of this one. But like I say, this beer doesn't have that kind of granola quality that you'll find in a lot of modern pastry stouts actually. But yeah, the kind of brown sugary notes that you do get out of this one, you'll notice that early on when you take the beer in. There's a little circle in the middle of your palate there where you do get like a kind of toasty caramel and a sweet sort of wet caramel, and that's in the very middle of your palate, and that of course will be from the alcohol. But on that note, I think we've covered everything we need to say about the middle third of your palate. I'm just surprised I'm not getting a wee bit more of the vanilla out of this one, but as I say, it's quite interesting. So that's that. On the let's move on to the back third of your palate then. As I've said, there are some trends with your palate. The further forward on your palate you are, the sweeter the flavours are going to be. The further back they are, the more dry and bitter they're going to be. But on the back third of your palate, you're going to get similar flavours, just at different intensities in comparison with the middle third of your palate. So the border region between middle and back third of your palate, you do get a little bit of that kind of sponge cakey base in there, and the wholemeal brown bread on top of that. But then, yeah, the base of the back third of your palate, you do get that roasty, toasty, well-fired kind of bread crust in there, and it feels a little bit drier. Above that, you get a slightly crackery type layer, but then you get the kind of chocolate. Above that, you get the chocolate. Yeah, you get the kind of chocolatey sponge cakey layer there. So yeah, lovely kind of chocolate sponge cakey layer, which feels kind of light and kind of airy. And then above that, you have the kind of wholemeal brown bread layer, which again feels a little bit lighter and more airy. But you can feel the kind of charred chocolate and the cocoa nib just creeping over the top of that into the back third of the palate. And then above everything else, you've got the kind of yeasty notes to the beer. So let's just focus on those a minute. So yeah, the yeasty side of the beer with this one, it's quite the yeasty side of the beer for me, like it's a very light sort of like the yeasty character is like a slightly more dense chocolate sponge that's there. It has got a little bit of woody element to it, a little bit of a kind of pecan-y, nutty sort of note, and it's just wrapped in this kind of light, toasty, brown sugary character. And as I say, that sits above everything else on the back third of your palate with this beer. So yeah, that's great. I do really like how that pieces together, and definitely underneath it you've got some of the kind of charry cocoa nibs just sitting on top. But definitely the back third of your palate, you can feel the flavour is taller. Then as you come further forward into the middle third of your tongue, it just kind of condenses down and squashes together. But I think we've covered the malty and yeasty side of this beer. It's actually quite a straightforward beer, this one, to be honest with you, and it's quite a dry sweet stout, if that makes sense. But yeah, in terms of the hoppy side of the beer then, let's go on to the green component. In the back corners of the palate, you do get a nice little bit of earthiness in there. As you move further forward, it gives you a little touch of herbal character, and as you push forward toward the kind of front corners of your palate, you do get just a little tiny hint of floral character, but mainly the hoppy character is quite smooth and quite dry, to be honest with you. But round the front curve of the tongue, you get a little bit of a lighter grassiness, and it's more of a kind of wet, leafy grassiness that you get out of this one, which is kind of interesting. As I said earlier, imperial stouts are not the most hop-forward of styles, especially when you go for the kind of sweeter things like this, but definitely a little bit of hoppy presence to this beer. But let's focus on that front third of your palate and the fruity side of things then. So the border region between front third and middle third of your palate, you get a nice little bit of bready build up in there. You've got the base is more of that kind of chocolatey sponge that I was talking about, and the wholemeal brown bread sits on top of that. But the base of the front third of your palate is a really nice kind of roasty, toasty, well-fired bread crust. You do have a bit of cracker in there, a kind of spongy. There is that sort of chocolate spongy character, and then you get that nice oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters just roll their way out of the beer. What I would say though is that on that border region between front and middle third of your palate, you do get a wee bit of an almost kind of phenolic type quality coming out of this one, which is really nice too. So yeah, really nice little bit of kind of cakey phenolic type note in there, which is interesting. Yeah, a little bit of that almost cough syrupy type thing. But yeah, above everything else then, as I say, on that front third you get the toasty, well-fired kind of bread crust in there, a bit of the kind of crackery layer, then the chocolate sponge, but then you get that nice oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters just roll their way out of the beer. And for me, that's it's really nice in this one, and you can feel the cherry adjunct in this beer too. So from the hoppy side of things, at the back of that front third of your palate, you do get a little bit of a juicy plum. It's got a wee bit of tartness to it, but then underneath that, you get a little bit of like prune, like dry plums. And as you move toward the middle of that front third of your palate. There's a little bit of a there is a little bit of a sort of like figgy type character there, and as you move further forward into the front half of the front third of your palate, you get like a sort of black currant underneath and maybe a little bit of a sharper blackberry on top. But on top of everything else, you do of course get the black cherry adjunct to this one. And the thing you have to be aware of with beers is that when you add fruit in to beer as an adjunct, it's always going to suppress a little bit of the green component, and you can kind of feel that cherry character just around the kind of front curve of your tongue there and pushing back a little bit because of the just the adjunct there, so it pushes away against the kind of green component there. But yeah, the black cherry is just giving you a little bit of juiciness around the edge of your palate there, and of course because of that the beer won't be so hoppy and bitter, but it's nice. But yeah, I really do like how all of this pieces together actually. It's a really nice beer from that perspective. The fruity notes are just quite sharp in a way, and it's quite in keeping with the overall lightness of this beer. This is one of these beers where a lot of the complexity of flavour comes out in the aftertaste, and that's when you get most of the coconut in this one and just a little touch of vanilla, but otherwise it's quite cakey and a little bit, it's a kind of mix of it is a little bit more of a kind of RIS with a little bit of pastry stout quality and a little bit of a milk stout quality. That's how the flavours kind of developed. I think I said at the start of the beer earlier it was the other way around, but still I think it's really interesting, this one, how the flavours developed over the time that we've been sitting here thinking about it. But yeah, the black cherries you can feel just going around the edges of your palate there, and I think it's quite nice in that regard. But yeah, I think we can leave it at that for the flavour section. Let's just round off this review with a wee look at the mouthfeel. So yeah, for me, the overall mouthfeel of this beer will be, the overall mouthfeel of this beer, it's pushing toward mid-body. Like I say, the mouthfeel of this is very light compared to what you would think it would be. So yeah, kind of mid to top end of mid-body beer, this one. The carbonation is very smooth. Overall, it's got quite a silky mouthfeel to it, I would say. But you get quite a bit of dryness and bitterness out of this beer the further into the aftertaste you go. It's potentially got equivalent of 60 or 70 IBUs just from the dryness of this one, so that would be perceived bitterness. I don't know what the calculated bitterness of this particular beer would be, but yeah, as we said, the malt base has kind of roasty toastiness underneath, a sort of cakey, savoury type character in the middle, a drier roasty character on top, and then a wee bit of sweetness in there, and then yeah, you've got the hoppy bitterness and then a wee bit of a kind of wet, fruity character coming out of this one too. So overall, it's a really interesting one, this. It has kind of tested my palate. It wasn't quite what I expected. It has leaned more and more toward that pastry stout style category as I've got more into it. But it's really, in terms of pastry stout, as I say, not a style that I greatly enjoy, but this one has been quite nice actually. So yeah, gets a thumbs up from me in that regard. A pastry stout that I actually quite enjoyed, which is quite rare. So yeah, I think we can leave it at that for this one. This one was the Wolf Moon, an imperial pastry stout, quite obviously at 11% ABV, but they're describing it as a coconut, chocolate and black cherry imperial stout, this one. But really nice and definitely cool to do another sit down review from Left-Handed Giant for the first time in what feels like a good long while. So yeah, once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comments section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Left-Handed Giant as well. And we will see about returning to these guys again at some point in the near future. And we'll see about doing a few different styles from these guys as well. You have seen some on the Out and About video, but yeah, I think we need to get a few more bottles and cans and things from this brewery and see what we can do. But thank you again for watching. Check out my social media, check out Left-Handed Giant social media, and I'll see you guys again very, very shortly. Slàinte, skål, and cheers.